guys. Welcome to Vulture Fest. I'm Rachel Handler. This is Elizabeth Olsen, as you already know.
Hi.
We're going to be talking about his three daughters for a while. Then we'll be going back and looking at your illustrious career. We'll be looking at some clips. So let's get started. Tell me how you're feeling. You're a little bit out from the release of his three daughters, and I know you said it's been about a month since you've talked about it, and some things have changed. I'm curious what you meant by that. What's been the reception, and how have people been talking about it?
Well, I think we just had a break from doing press in August and September, and I think we had maybe a month off, and then we had kind of a random Q&A not too long ago, and it's just nice talking about it because I think I don't know, I nothing has really changed per se, but I have been able to speak with more people who have seen the film, who found the film in different ways, friends of mine, winded person.
I love it. This is great. This is perfect.
I do love a dialogue, but I also am like, and then that
let's
thing. Go.
Ozza wrote it specifically for you, right? And he hand delivered you the script. And I'm curious if you can tell us about that moment. What was that like? And what did he say? And what was your response?
So Ozza and we worked on a show that we were talking about, Sorry for Your Loss.
What about the character? I read that you were kind of surprised by the way the character that he wrote for you.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I think there's a few things, right? So
find out about the Carrie and Natasha of it all. At what point was he and here these women will be playing your sisters, and how did you feel about that first time you met them, and what your where were you and what was your first impression of each other? Well, I want to talk more about that, but let's watch our first clip, which is the opening scene.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell me about that scene, because we get right into it in the film. You guys are all doing these sort of very, in my mind, sort of theatrical monologues, and I'm curious what that was like, what kind of direction you got there, and also I've also read that you sort of find your way into a character with voice, and there's such a specific voice that you're doing, and I want to hear about that as well.
So it was our first day on set.
And tell me a little bit about sort of the rehearsal period. I know you guys had a few days, and how did you find your way into that sisterly dynamic? Did it happen really quickly? Were you guys able to kind of quickly find that? Were you your characters right away? I mean, it's thing I feel like you guys really nailed is I have two sisters also, and the sort of way that you're kind of lobbying each other to each other's sides, the little glances, the passive aggression, the way that the littlest things are you could just destroy each other. And I'm curious how much you talked about that as a trio. How much did you guys talk about your own families and your own dynamics and that kind of thing? Did it ever get therapy-like?
Not.
Can you fill us in when you figure it out, or?
Yeah, sure, I'll try.
Okay.
But there was a time where we, in ancient, the ancient philosophers, we referred to the temporal body and the atemporal body, and
I love that scene. I love that scene.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, to yell like that's quite a thing to get in those kinds of I've never been in a physical fight with people in my family. So
never, even as children.
There was a stop hitting yourself,
sure.
But and then
repression thing, and then you was it just cathartic to film? How did you get there emotionally?
I think the thing that we tried to figure out as much as possible was the physicality for it to feel like it was actually physical, right? In your film, you know that part.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So great. She's right by that white door, and he exits, and she goes, "Mom!" and then goes into the hallway waiting for the elevator.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Did you guys ever find yourself? Were there ever any sort of sisterly arguments that the three of you had? Did you find yourself kind of falling into that dynamic between the three of you, or was it just completely?
No, I think the only types of
with Natasha. Or
no, it's confusing. Okay. It's confusing because we had all these apartments in the building. That's not where we were sleeping at night.
No. But you lived. You didn't. Okay.
No, my husband and I rented a place.
Oh, okay, amazing.
Carrie lives outside of the city, but all day long, she and I had a shared apartment as if it were a trailer.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of journalists have misquoted us.
I read that you live together. Okay.
Yes, a lot of journalists have misquoted us. Even when we say, and we don't mean literally. That has happened so many times. And Carrie will text me and be like, they got it wrong again. And we're like, well, I don't know how to talk about this anymore. But
We're correcting the record.
we're correcting it. Yeah.
And so what you guys would like play Wordle and word game. Tell me a little bit about what you would do in your fake apartment that you did not live in.
We all became obsessed with spelling bee.
We're skipping a clip for time, but there was a
Yes.
clip talking about being a deadhead, which I love. And you said you weren't one, but if
No.
you were to follow anyone around the country, band, artist, spiritual leader, for example, who would you follow? What would be your Grateful Dead?
So this is a problem I've had since childhood.
Oh,
Yeah, that's how I answer that question.
that's incredibly healthy.
I don't know, actually.
I think it is. I think that's like what Buddhism is. Detached from the material world. You don't even need this book that you're reading.
But I'm like, yeah, I know I am pretty detached from a lot of things. I like things.
Yeah.
And I prefer things. I prefer, like, there are some materialist things where I'm like, well, I prefer it that way. But I don't know. Like, I really don't know. I would like to, if I had to be on the road.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Tell me,
What would
a
you
little bit-
do?
What would I do?
Yeah, do
Who would
you
I
have an
follow
answer
around?
for that? Yeah.
God, I mean, I'm kind of obsessed with Ariana Grande, so I feel like she's my Grateful Dead.
She's really entertaining.
I love her.
Yeah,
like
she's been great on us.
not to creep her out, but I would follow her.
Yeah,
yeah. I would.
She's she's got a great character that she adjusts for whatever reasons, whatever she's doing.
Yeah.
I love that pop stars get to do that.
I know.
Pop stars really just they just get to be in a phase.
They have eras. We don't get to have eras.
I mean, we could. I just can't analyze.
Absolutely.
Yeah, pop stars are important, iconic images.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
And important. That's maybe that might not be the right word, but but it's nice to have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
for
We love pop
distraction
stars.
of our mortality. Yeah.
To stop us from staring into the void. We need her.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit about. I know you've said previously that you don't want to do projects that are just streaming, and theatrical release is very important to you.
Yes.
And so, tell me a little bit about navigating that. Obviously, this was in theaters briefly.
Yes, which is as much as they do actually at Netflix, and they do 2 weeks, and I was so grateful that they did that.
Said like I need this to be theatrical because I know you also.
It was
produced
something that Ozza said.
Okay.
Yeah, Ozza wouldn't have made a deal if he didn't get to have a theatrical release. And it ended up a 35 millimeter print was not part of that. That was more like they did that just kind of because it was something we asked for as a group, and it was something they were happy to do, and knew that it would create more of like an event around going to the theaters when you get to have those. Going to see a film print of something, like anything can happen. There is a human involved in projecting what you're watching, and there's you could see stitches sometimes based on when people are changing the reel over. And I got to see The Brutalist in 70 millimeter at the Arrow, and it's different. It's something that feels more alive, and it was such an energized audience, and I understand that TV is at home, right? So that's streaming, or that's a network, or a network usually has a connection to streaming. But I do think, making an independent film, sometimes you won't have an option. Let's say you don't have many people, especially right now, acquisitions are very complicated and difficult, and we're all trying to understand how to move this thing forward while people are like constantly losing money. And so I think streaming sometimes is the only option for small films to be seen. I just don't have an interest in making something with the intention of knowing it's for streaming.
Yeah.
For a film.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you've recently talked about how at this phase in your career, you're more willing to sort of like stick your neck out for films, and you're producing, and you're going into the pitch rooms and working to get things made. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, I know I just read that Todd Solondz piece in the New Yorker about how he's trying so hard to get Love Child made, which is a movie that you're cast in.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Is that something that you've been like rallying for.
Yeah, I wasn't even. I'm not a producer on it, but I've never hustled more for a movie that is having a hard time getting made. I mean, there's so many things I could say about.
And you obviously, it seems like your heart and you prefer to do sort of like indie projects versus like a big Marvel. How do you think of it in your mind? Is it like one for them, one for me? Is it like?
I'm not sure yet. I never really had the mentality of one for them, one for me. I think because I've had Marvel has been such a
Yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna do. We have a little bit of time left. I want to go back and do a little bit of sort of.
It's so much more. I'm sorry.
No, this is great. This has all been amazing. So we don't have a clip of this, but I do want to ask about your very first acting role. You were 4, and you were in the music video "BUTT Out" with your sisters.
Yes.
What do you remember about that role in that time in your life?
I think I vaguely remember shooting that.
They're very mean to you. I rewatched it. They're kind of bullying you.
So it was this constant that happened, when you have 4 kids and 2 of them are working, the other 2 go to the set after school.
Yeah.
And that is your daycare, which was nice because there's teachers there and things like that. So I got to learn young or, things like that. I don't think you can. I think it was only shown in the city of Detroit. And I filmed probably like labor laws were, not great because I think I was filming at like midnight downtown LA. Like it was very weird.
You were in character as a person.
Brought my own
a victim of the internet. Thing that you say that like you watched Jenna Malone and Stepmom and that made you want to be an actor because I'm curious about how your relationship to having sisters in the industry when you were growing up shaped the way that you think about fame, the way that you did or did not want to be famous or did or did not want to act.
Well, my sister's baby, well before Nepo baby was like a term and doesn't really even apply to me considering my parents. But there is a form of nepotism, when you are adjacent to people who have a lineage to a job that you want, regardless of what the industry is. And I knew that if I focused on theater, which I did, I moved to New York and I was at the Atlantic Theater Company school program through Tisch and started understudying when I was 19 in theater. Auditioned for Gary Hines, who does all of Martin McDonagh's plays. And I just started working. And interestingly enough, it was so much harder to get a job in theater for me in New York. It was very hard for me to break through. It was very hard for me to be accepted to auditions. I was definitely profiled in a way. And so it was because of my school and them producing Martin McDonagh's plays that I was able to meet a casting director at one of these understudy auditions who started casting me as an understudy. Mm-hmm. And it just ended up being that and I really wanted to get Shakespeare in the Park. When I was 21, I had gotten to like the 3rd round and they were doing 2 plays in rep. And I was so hoping to get it and I didn't. And then that summer I got to film Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. So it wasn't supposed to happen. And so that became like kind of this accidental direction of my career when really I didn't know anything about filming on camera. It wasn't something I learned in school. And
so you really wanted to do theater like exclusively?
Yeah. At least to create a foundation for myself. Yeah.
Do you want to do it again? Like, is it something you're looking to do now?
It is. I was supposed to do something in the West End a year ago, last fall into winter, and it fell apart, sadly.
Kind of put you off for a bit, maybe?
It was terrifying. Daphne Rubin Vega was my nurse, and she was telling me, like, Lizzie, this is not every experience. This is she's been doing this, for whatever at the time was like 30 years. And she was like, in 30 years, this was my top 3 of worst experiences I've ever had. Don't let this deter you. And I was like, sorry. I'm totally freaked now. This was awful. And the plays I understudied were terrible, so I didn't actually end up having the greatest of experiences in the theater. Not like I was choosing as an understudy or not, like,
sure.
Is this worth my time? Like, you're not, that's not the agency you have.
Has the sort of, it sounds like the direction of your career has maybe like surprised you, right? Like, could you have expected sort of the things that you've done? And
No, and I wish there was a part of me that wished there was a bit more time of me trying and trying and trying so that I could create. Well, maybe and maybe not. I don't know. Because in my mind, I think, well, if I were to have had, like, let's say 5 years of doing some things that no one really saw, there is some sort of work that you put into your own taste, your own dreams, your own wishes that become incredibly thoughtful. And, or maybe you're still working out of desperation. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know if, or, God, if I could only, because I think making decisions, I didn't really know what I was doing. Martha was an accident. Mm-hmm. And the job I filmed around the same time as Martha is this terrible movie called Peace, Love, and Misunderstanding, but it was with Bruce Beresford who directed it. And it was Keener and it was Jane Fonda. Like, it was a cool group of people, but it's a terrible movie. And, sorry, it is. It's like a bad family movie. But I was so grateful to have a job with those people. So, like, that's different. But then when you get to have this agency of how you choose things, I was just like, well, that looks different. You know, I wasn't thinking about anything else.
You weren't being like super strategic.
Yeah. And I think it's because I just felt so lucky to be there or something. And so I do feel like it's continued to surprise me because I've continued to learn and invest in different ways. And then, you go through longer exists, I think. But we got to do a straight to series order, and Showtime wanted to, like, keep putting us on hold. Mm-hmm. And so, and then I got to learn how to produce. And so I'm so grateful that I had that experience. And I met Ozza, the full circle with his 3 daughters, and like so many great filmmakers. Kat Candler was one of our directors. It was just a great group of people. James Ponsel.
When do you feel like you were like, oh, I actually know what I'm looking for? I'm sort of consciously choosing things. When did that switch for you? And what were you looking for?
I think I've always tried to get better at it. I think it was because I had this time where I was doing Sorry for Your Loss for 2 years, Marvel projects, and then it went into WandaVision, and then WandaVision went into, I'm not going to do that, but there's like quite a few.
Yeah.
There's maybe like 50. And,
that's a lot. Yeah.
Well, there's quite a range of people making movies today. And I have so many filmmakers in Europe that I'm obsessed with, and who knows if they ever do English speaking films. But to say that, I think I realized that I wasn't potentially being considered for things I would like to be considered for because I wasn't, doing enough of that. And so his 3 daughters was an attempt at that. Doing a film that hasn't come out that was in Toronto called Assessment, was trying to do that with a new filmmaker, Claire Fortuné, who's a French music director and advertising director, commercial director. And so there have been these clear choices, I think, that have been more about that shift.
This is like a new pop.
I'm in some era.
You're in an era.
I'm in an era.
And you're doing like an Albert Brooks style rom-com, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, Eternity. We filmed it this summer. Divine Joy Randolph, Miles Teller, Callum Turner, John Early. Our director, David Frayne, is an Irish filmmaker, and it's like in the style of like broadcast news or a Billy Wilder film. It's a romantic comedy with humor and heart, and and it was fun. I get to play a 92-year-old woman who's in the afterlife, and well, I guess back to death. Yeah,
Can't leave it alone. Is there someone whose career you look at and you're like, I want that?
I think there's quite a few. I look at, I think Carey Mulligan. I think Andrea Riseborough. I think Michelle Williams. I think those are the first 3 women that come to mind. I find them all to be really interesting, and I want to watch them all the time. And they're always transforming, whether it's slight or in big swings. And I really enjoy watching them.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Well, and if there's anyone in the audience who can fund the Todd Solondz film, I feel like that's
Or ask someone to.
yeah. Ask someone to. We'll take the money, or you can find some money.
Yeah.
What else are you sort of sticking your neck out on right now as a producer, or something else that you're kind of rallying to get made? That you can talk about?
I'm going to put a pin in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not like a
Another
Shark Tank
time.
style pitch.
No, because there's like 4, and then I'm sure there'll be more. And then I also, sometimes you have to say goodbye to things that just can't come together. And so anyway, it's kind of hard to talk about not knowing like when things can come together, if they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if the people who are making them would like me to do that or not.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
That's very fair. Is there a role, since we didn't get to some of the clips because you were too fascinating?
So fast.
No, seriously.
No, it's just, I just talk a lot.
No, you were amazing. Is there a role looking back that you really just like feel so proud of, or really feels like encapsulates what we're talking about now, this sort of like the future of your career?
I loved playing Candy Montgomery in Love and Death. I really loved that. I felt like I got to play a character that I don't know. I think of, oh gosh, I just loved it so much.
This was
That's it.
amazing.
Zero.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Thank you.